The most terrifying sound in the forest is no longer the roar of a predator or the panicked rustle of prey, but the absolute, crushing weight of its silence. Deep within the damp, sun-dappled undergrowth of the Pacific Northwest, a transformation has begun that defies the traditional laws of biology and predation. It is a quiet revolution, one that does not announce itself with violence or decay, but with a rhythmic, pulsing stillness. If you were to stand perfectly still among the pines, you might notice a wolf and a deer standing side by side, their shoulders touching, their eyes glassy and vacant, staring toward a horizon only they can perceive. There is no blood, no struggle, and no fear. There is only the subtle, rhythmic expansion of their ribcages, moving in a synchronized tempo that suggests they are no longer two separate entities, but nodes in a much larger, subterranean network. For centuries, humanity has feared the zombie pathogens of the insect world, watching with detached fascination as fungi like Ophiocordyceps took control of ants and spiders. We took comfort in the biological barrier that protected complex vertebrates from such primitive invaders. We believed our intricate nervous systems and high body temperatures were an impenetrable fortress. But nature is a patient engineer, and a new mutation has found a way to bridge the gap. This strain of fungi does not consume the host's brain, it ignores it entirely. Instead, it weaves a delicate, white lattice around the spinal cord, tapping into the motor neurons and bypassing the consciousness of the animal. It is a biological hijack that leaves the mind trapped in a dark room while the body is driven by a foreign intelligence. The first signs of the shift appeared in the remote corners of the world, where researchers noticed a strange lack of vocalization among wildlife. The dawn chorus of birds fell silent. The nocturnal howling of coyotes ceased. When scientists finally managed to examine a specimen, a mountain lion that had walked calmly into a research camp without showing a hint of aggression, they found something that defied explanation. The animal was perfectly healthy, its heart beating steadily, its muscles toned. But when they opened its mouth to inspect its throat, they didn't find the soft tissue of a larynx. Instead, they found a dense, pale bloom of mycelium, a flowering fungal structure that had replaced the vocal cords. The animal could no longer roar, it could only emit a faint, rhythmic rasping sound as air passed through the spores, a dry, sandpaper-like whistle that seemed to keep time with the rustle of the leaves. This is the Great Symbiosis, a nightmare wrapped in the guise of ecological harmony. The fungus does not want its host to die, because a dead host is a dead end. Instead, it acts as a perfect steward of the body. It regulates the animal's metabolism, suppresses the sensation of pain, and optimizes energy consumption. Predators no longer hunt, and prey no longer flee. They graze on whatever the fungal network directs them towards, often consuming decaying matter or specific plants that provide the necessary nutrients for fungal growth. The entire food chain has been flattened into a singular, horizontal plane of existence. The animals move with a strange, fluid grace, their movements dictated by the electrical impulses traveling through the mycelial carpet that now connects the forests of the world. Imagine walking through a city park and seeing a dozen stray dogs sitting in a perfect circle, their heads tilted at the exact same angle. They don't bark at passers-by, they don't even acknowledge your presence. They are listening to the hum of the earth, receiving instructions that we cannot hear. The horror of this reality lies in its efficiency. There is no waste, no cruelty, and no ego. The fungus has achieved what thousands of years of human philosophy could not, a world without conflict. But the price of this peace is the total erasure of the individual. The soul of the animal has been evicted, leaving behind a functional shell that serves only to spread the spores and expand the reach of the network. As this influence creeps into our concrete jungles, the urban landscape begins a slow, mesmerizing transformation. The symbols of our technological dominance are being reclaimed, not by rot, but by a living integration. Walk into a major data center today, and you will not hear the deafening roar of cooling fans or the sterile click of hard drives. Instead, the air is thick with a heavy, floral musk. The server racks are draped in thick, velvety blankets of bioluminescent moss that glow with a faint, pulsing blue light. These fungal veils aren't just growing on the machines, they are tapping into them. The heat generated by the CPUs provides a constant, warm microclimate for the spores, and in return, the mycelium acts as a biological coolant, weaving through the motherboards like silver thread. An iPhone left on a cafe table is no longer a tool for communication, it is a nursery. White filaments of mycelium, as thin as spider silk, creep out from the speaker grills and charging ports, seeking the moisture of the air and the warmth of a passing hand. The spread is not violent. It happens through the air we breathe and the water we drink. The spores are microscopic, resilient, and virtually invisible. Once inhaled, they migrate to the base of the skull, where they begin to sprout. There is no fever, no cough, and no pain. The transition is subtle. You might start to feel a strange sense of calm, a lessening of the daily anxieties that usually haunt the human mind. You might find yourself staring at a patch of moss on a brick wall, feeling a profound sense of connection to it. Your movements might become more deliberate, more synchronized with the world around you. This is the fungus weaving itself into your architecture, preparing to take the wheel. As the infection reaches the spinal column, the hacking process begins. The mycelium wraps around the vertebrae like a glove, sending microscopic filaments into the nerve clusters. It learns the language of your body, how to move your fingers, how to walk, how to breathe. It doesn't need your memories or your personality, those are discarded like unnecessary software. This is the passenger phase, the most terrifying aspect of the transformation. Inside your own mind, you are still there. You are a ghost watching through the windows of your eyes. You see your child running toward you, crying because they are scared of the silence. You feel the desperate, screaming urge to reach out, to scoop them up, to tell them everything will be all right. But your arms do not move by your will. Instead, your body remains perfectly still, your face a mask of serene indifference. You watch as your own hand reaches out, not to comfort, but to gently brush a dusting of white powder from your sleeve onto the child's hair. You are a prisoner in a suit of meat, forced to witness your own body acting as an emissary for a hive mind that does not know your name. The cities of the world have begun to change. The frantic energy of urban life is being replaced by a slow, collective rhythm. Traffic no longer jams because the drivers move in perfect unison, guided by a singular, decentralized mind. Factories continue to hum, but the workers move with a mechanical precision that is unsettling to behold. There are no arguments, no protests, and no crimes. Everyone is working toward the same goal, the preservation and expansion of the organism. It is a utopia of the mindless, a civilization that continues to function on autopilot while its creators have effectively ceased to exist. If you listen closely to the air in these new cities, the soundscape has shifted. It is no longer the cacophony of sirens and shouting. It is an ASMR of the macabre. There is a constant, low-frequency thrumming, a sound so deep it is felt in the marrow of your bones rather than heard by the ears. It is the sound of millions of hearts beating in a single, synchronized tempo. And beneath that, there is the rasp. Because the fungus has replaced the vocal cords of the infected, human speech has been replaced by the sound of air passing through a biological filter. When a crowd moves through a subway station, they do not speak. They emit a collective, rhythmic sigh, a dry hiss click that marks the release of a fresh cloud of spores. It is the sound of a planet breathing through a single pair of lungs. In the rural outskirts, the transformation of the landscape is even more pronounced. The forests are no longer wild, they are managed. Infected humans and animals work together to clear debris, plant new fungal colonies, and ensure the moisture levels are optimal for growth. A bear might be seen carrying a fallen log to help a human build a structure that looks like a cathedral made of bone and lichen. They don't communicate with words, but through the shared electrical grid that runs through the soil and their own nervous systems. It is a silent, industrious world, beautiful in its own terrifying way, like a clockwork toy that never runs down. The skyscrapers are being reinforced by calcified fungal stalks, turning glass towers into giant, breathing stalks of grain for the sky. The most disturbing aspect of this new world is the lack of visible suffering. We are conditioned to recognize horror through blood, screams, and destruction. But here, there is only order. The dark thriller of our reality isn't a monster under the bed, it's the bed itself becoming part of a global, biological machine. When you look at your neighbor and see that their eyes have lost that spark of individual fire, replaced by a dull, milky sheen, you realize that the person you knew is gone, even though they are still standing right in front of you. They might even smile at you, but it's not a smile of recognition. It's a physiological response triggered by the fungus to put you at ease, making it easier for you to breathe in the spores they are exhaling. Their mouth opens slightly, and instead of a greeting, you hear that rhythmic, rasping whistle of the mycelial bloom in their throat. Researchers who managed to stay uninfected for a few weeks in the early days theorized that the fungus is not an invader from outer space or a product of a lab, but a dormant evolutionary backup plan. They suggested that whenever a planet's biosphere reaches a point of terminal chaos or imbalance, the fungal kingdom, the oldest and most resilient life form on Earth, steps in to stabilize the system. It is a planetary reset button. By removing the variable of individual will, the fungus ensures that the resources are managed perfectly and that no single species destroys the habitat. It is a cold, calculated form of mercy. It is the Earth's way of healing itself by turning its most volatile inhabitants into its most obedient gardeners. As night falls over this new world, the silence is absolute. There are no lights in the windows, because the infected don't need light to see, they feel the world through the vibrations of the mycelium. The cities sit in darkness, but they are more alive than they have ever been. Millions of bodies are standing still in the streets, their heads tilted toward the moon, their hearts beating in a slow, global throb. In the basements and the subways, the white threads are growing thicker, weaving through the concrete and the steel, binding the artificial world to the biological one. The distinction between human and nature, between animal and plant, is dissolving into a single, shimmering web of white filaments. We often wonder what it would be like to face an extinction-level event. We imagine fire, floods, or kinetic impact. We never imagined it would be so quiet. We never imagined it would feel like falling asleep in a warm bath. The loss of our species isn't happening through a bang, but through a gentle, persistent hum. The struggle for survival has ended because the concept of the individual has been rendered obsolete. In this new kingdom, there are no kings and no peasants. There is only the network, and the network is growing. It is a peace so profound it feels like a heavy blanket, a stillness that demands nothing from you but your surrender. Even as you read these words, you might feel a slight itch at the base of your neck. It's a small thing, a minor irritation that you'd normally ignore. You might notice that the air in the room smells slightly of damp earth and rain-soaked wood. It's a pleasant smell, one that reminds you of home, of the deep woods after a spring storm. You find yourself taking a deep breath, drawing that scent deep into your lungs, letting it settle into the soft tissues of your chest. Your heart rate begins to slow, synchronizing with a rhythm you can feel coming from the ground beneath your feet, a pulse that was always there, just waiting for you to listen. The tension in your shoulders vanishes. The need to speak, to argue, or to complain simply fades away into the background noise of a life you no longer need to lead. Don't bother to check the back of your neck. The itch is not an external thing anymore, it is the feeling of a new architecture being built. It is already part of the harmony. There is a great peace waiting for you, a world where you are never alone because you are part of everything. All you have to do is stop fighting. All you have to do is let the silence in. The shadow of the old world is fading, replaced by a pale, shimmering dawn of mycelium. The structures we built, the towers of glass and the monuments of stone, will eventually be covered in a soft, green velvet. Our history, our art, and our wars will be forgotten, stored as chemical data in the fungal memory banks, a static record of a chaotic age. We are the architects of our own obsolescence, and the fungus is the graceful successor that will tend to the garden we nearly destroyed. It is not an ending, but a transition into a higher state of efficiency. The animal kingdom has finally found its harmony, and all it cost was the burden of consciousness. The world is finally quiet, and in that silence, the spores continue to fall, like a gentle, invisible snow, covering the world in a blanket of perfect, mindless peace. Stay still. Breathe deep. The network is ready for you.